Hello, I'm Brannon Howse, and at WVW Broadcast Network, we take customer service seriously. If you have an issue with your Situation Room membership, you want to renew your Situation Room membership, you want to reset your password, you forgot your password, all you need to do is email or text us. The fastest response is by text. You can text us at 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Now, this is very important. When emailing or texting, you must give us the email address tied to your Situation Room account so we can look up your account for you. So please be sure to give us the email address tied to your Situation Room account so we can look up your account and be ready to help you when you text us at 901-825-0652. You can also email us, housemelissa@icloud.com. That's House, Howse, Melissa @icloud.com. Again, housemelissa@icloud.com. And my wife will get back to you either by email or text, and we'll make sure that you are a satisfied member of the Situation Room. Thank you for being a member of the Situation Room, your conservative Worldview TV channel.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Weekend Radio with Brannon Howse.
All right, welcome. Glad you're with us. My guest today again is Diana West, who's written an excellent report called The Red Thread. And I hope many of you have gone to Amazon and gotten a copy, or to securefreedom.org. We had a great response to yesterday's broadcast, and what was shocking to many was how we were able to tie the intelligence deep state, the deep state coming against our way of life, our borders, our sovereignty, the freedoms that we've enjoyed, that deep state, that fifth column, those cultural Marxists. Yesterday, right here live on the air, we tied the deep state to the evangelical deep state that I write about in my book, Marxianity. And one of the ways we did that was by exposing that James Comey has been greatly influenced by the worldview of Reinhold Niebuhr, an outright Marxist who promoted the idea of Christian communism and who believed in the will to power. And, of course, Comey was also influenced by some of the guys at the Frankfurt School, the cultural Marxist Frankfurt School. Well, the Frankfurt School openly followed Friedrich Nietzsche, who taught the will to power. All there was power. Just get power. I'm pretty sure Reinhold was also influenced by the Frankfurt School because he taught the same thing. There was simply power, and that you could do something that would be considered, quote, wrong, end quote, if it was for the betterment of man. The end justifies the means. Pragmatism. This is the worldview of James Comey, who became FBI director, who then goes after a candidate, President Trump, and then goes after the sitting president. Again, the connection is with Reinhold Niebuhr, who is greatly promoted by none other than Tim Keller, founder of the Gospel Coalition. Again, I expose all this in my book, Marxianity. If you were to get my book, Marxianity, at marxianity.com, and you were to get Diana's book, The Red Thread, you would absolutely see the connections going back and forth from the evangelical deep state to the intelligence deep state, and seeing that both of these groups are being influenced by some of the same people. What's fascinating to me is that the deep state inside our government is being influenced by religious Marxists. Most of you probably would never have thought that. You would think, well, they're just influenced by Marxists. But reality is, when you have the FBI director, and I know there are others, being influenced by Reinhold Niebuhr, what you have is a, quote, Christian Marxist, end quote. And so the religious, or I should say the spiritual nature of this Marxism is what really ties together the evangelical deep state, Tim Keller, the cultural Marxist at the Cultural Marxist Gospel Coalition, Together for the Gospel, Al Mohler, Lincoln Duncan, Mark Dever, and others, ties them, I believe, directly right back to the deep state, because in our intelligence community, because many of them are following some of the same leaders or working within organizations where their leaders, i.e. Tim Keller, are also promoting people like Reinhold Niebuhr, who James Comey is praising. And today, we will learn a little bit about someone I've talked about for years, and that is Strobe Talbot, who was, he's a roommate of Bill Clinton when they were Rhodes Scholars together at Oxford in 1969. Strobe Talbert, as I've been writing about since the mid-'90s, wrote a piece for Time magazine calling for world government. And we'll find out today that he may have indeed been, well, being used by the KGB while in a top position at the State Department. And all of this to say that Strobe went on to be the head of the Brookings Institute for 15 years. What is the connection between the Brookings Institute and some of their partners and the evangelical deep state? Diana West, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's wonderful to be back. Thank you. I'm enjoying these connections that we're making together here.
And I sent you over a PDF, as you know, of
Marxianity.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right.
Fantastic. Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about, I want to go back to Comey in a minute, but yes. I want to talk a little bit about Strobe Talbot right off the bat, because, boy, that's fascinating, because here is Strobe Talbot, who roomed with Bill Clinton in 1969 as a student at Oxford at the Rhodes Scholar Program. And just remind our listening audience, if you go get my book, The Coming Religious Reich meaning empire or kingdom, and I talk about how they're using religion or spirituality to push for world government, and here we keep seeing more and more evidence that these guys are indeed using the idea of Christian communism or Christian Marxism to drive their world dominion. But Cecil Rhodes started the Rhodes Scholarship Program, and the whole idea was to indoctrinate young people, potential leaders in the area of government and education and economics, to push for world government out of Great Britain. And I think that's what we're going to see is a Eurocentric world government eventually. But that's the Rhodes Scholarship Program that Bill Clinton and Strobe Talbot were at. And then when he becomes president, Bill makes him a powerful leader within the State Department. Tell us about the worldview of Strobe Talbot.
Yes, it's a very important piece of this, because just to bring you up to date, in December of 2018, we learned that Strobe Talbot was another one of these former Clinton officials, Washington institutions by now, who was also in conversation with the former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele during this same period of conspiracy and coup. So he is not just someone from the past, he's someone who is operating in this same atmosphere that we're trying to better understand. Strobe, yes, he was a roommate of Bill Clinton's at Oxford. He also, and this is another way that he became someone that I wanted to bring into this study, he was also a roommate at Yale, which is actually, I have to confess, my alma mater as well. He was a roommate at Yale of a man named Derek Shearer, who also became an official, a diplomat during the Bill Clinton presidency. He was ambassador to Finland at a certain point. The significance of the Shearer family is great. Also in terms not just of the Clinton years, but of the Hillary Clinton campaign period, because Derek Shearer's younger brother, Cody Shearer, and a man named Sidney Blumenthal put together what is sometimes referred to as the second anti-Trump dossier. So there was the Steele dossier coming out of the Fusion GPS organization and all of that we touched on yesterday. And there was also this other dossier that I'm calling the Shearer the Shearer dossier, or the Blumenthal dossier. And the reason that Derek comes roped into it, even though his name is not on it, is that Derek Shearer, Cody Shearer, and Sidney Blumenthal were all very deeply involved in the Dirty Tricks campaign that accompanied the Bill Clinton's move on the White House back in 1992. So all of these people have a long history. Strobe works into this right away, not just from his college and Oxford contacts. He was married to Brooke Shearer, so Derek and Cody's sister. I believe Brooke was Cody Shearer's twin sister, and she is deceased. While she was alive, she was very important inside the Clinton White House, having become a close associate of Hillary Clinton. So look how these people are interwoven, and I think that's another one of these very important things to understand, that these networks are familial, they go across generations, and of course they're just very influential in our politics. So Strobe became a journalist.
Let me stop you right there.
Yes.
Let me stop right there. So they tie all the way back. They tie all the way back to the early 90s.
Yes.
With the Clintons, which is key because this whole thing is about getting Hillary Clinton elected president. But you lost me on one spot, and I think you start talking about it on page 60. of the red thread, and that is this guy, Derek Shear, who roomed with Strobe Talbott at Yale before going on with Strobe Talbott and Clinton to room at Oxford as part of Rhodes Scholar. You're saying that Derek Shear also had a dossier, so it was a second dossier?
Well, there was a second dossier. No, his brother, Cody Shearer and Sidney Blumenthal, have a second dossier that becomes actually Christopher Steele at a certain point folds into his dossier and gives it all to the FBI.
Okay.
So Derek is involved in the sense that they work together, and this is something that I lay out. There was some new information that came out of his papers just in the last year or so, Derek Shearer, that show his really, it's quite a fascinating document. He wrote to Bill and Hillary back in 1992, having worked very hard on the campaign, and laid out all the reasons he should get an appointment, how he should get a plum job in that Bill Clinton administration. And part of it includes, and I excerpt it in the red thread, his listing of just the most horrible guerrilla tactics that he and Cody and Sid all engaged in to get Bill Clinton into the White House. So he was essentially reminding them of all the terrible things they did to the other Democratic challengers, Ross Perot, the Bush campaign, etc. So he's reminding him of who he really is. He is part of an effort that you see with other fake dossiers. For example, you may remember when there was an effort to accuse Vice President Dan Quayle of having bought illegal drugs as a senator and law student, if you remember that going back to the same period. Well, that was Cody Shearer trying to get phony dossiers into the media. I think a lot of these things we're looking at now have precedent in other political campaigns. So this is part of this effort to show how none of this was invented in 2016. This family is very important, and these tactics are very important in the rise of the Clintons. And as you say, ultimately in 2016, it's all for Hillary. So all these people have a backstory with each other. What's interesting about Cody Shearer and Sidney Blumenthal is by 2016, their name is mud, really, even among the left-wing journalists in this town. And I think that was the reason they were not getting anywhere with their own dossier, which really does resemble quite a lot of what we see in the Steele dossier. And I actually had a theory. Lee Smith, another reporter who's on this, came up with this, I believe, and I think he's right, that the Cody Sid dossier might have been first. They were Clinton dirty tricksters. They were trying to get this kind of dirt on candidate Trump into the mainstream, and people were balking at it because how could you trust these Clintonistas? And that may have figured into the plan to bring in this British intelligence officer who would give it a whole different polish, if you will, and a new name and a new face on this information. That's just conjecture. Lee Smith wrote about this, and I thought it was very interesting, so I included his theory on that. Be that as it may, there were these two dossiers that mirror each other, running around Washington, and different people were moving them in and out of the government. So that is where Derek really comes in. It's hard for me to imagine Derek was not, at least in an advisory role, on what his brother and Sidney Blumenthal, old Confederates, were doing in this campaign cycle, but that is conjecture.
Wow, isn't that fascinating? All right, so let's talk. I got a break coming up here. About 60 seconds. I got a break coming up. But you write on page 61 of your book that it's red thread relevant to recall that friends of Bill, Scheer, Ken, and State Department powerhouse Talbot was also an enthusiast, a missionary, a zealot for, quote, world government, end quote. In The Birth of the Global Nation, an essay appearing in Time magazine, a few months before Bill Clinton was elected president in 92, Talbot wrote that he looked forward to a time when, quote, nationhood as we know it will be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority, end quote. Talbot further predicted that by the end of the 21st century, the phrase citizen of the world, quote, will have assumed real meaning, end quote. The following year, 1993, Talbot, the Clinton administration's top Russia specialist, would take home the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award from the World Federalist Association. Folks, we'll pick it up right there when we come back with Diana West, a major Clinton friend and top official in the State Department, getting an award for calling for world government. Did he have any connection to the former KGB while in that position? We'll find out when we come back. Mark your calendar now for the 16th annual Ozarks Worldview Weekend at beautiful Lake of the Ozarks. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. We had a great 15th annual Ozarks Worldview Weekend, and now we're on to the 16th annual Ozarks Worldview Weekend. Friday night, May 3rd, Saturday, May 4th, half-day Sunday, May 5th. As I said, at beautiful Lake of the Ozarks at Tantera Resort. We've got our contracts, and we are off and running with a great lineup already scheduled for 2019. We have Arnold Fruchtenbaum, Messianic Jewish scholar Arnold Fruchtenbaum, whose family escaped from behind the Iron Curtain. Mark Hitchcock is back by popular demand. Ed Heinzen will be a first-time speaker for us at one of our in-person Worldview weekends. David Hawking, Andy Woods, and we have more speakers that we'll be booking very soon and let you know about. But I wanted to let you know about the speakers we already have lined up. I wanted to let you know we are going to go back to the Tantera Resort on beautiful Lake of the Ozarks, May 3rd. That's a Friday night, Saturday, May 4th, half-day Sunday, May 5th, 2019. It's not too early to go ahead and register and join us, and you can do that at wvwtv.com/Ozarks, wvwtv.com/Ozarks. Marty Getz will be joining us, providing music once again. Now again, Arnold Fruchtenbaum, Mark Hitchcock, Ed Heinzen, David Hawking, Andy Woods, and more speakers to come. This is just the lineup we've already secured. I think these speakers in itself would be worthy of a weekend, don't you? We are going to book even more speakers, but I wanted to go ahead and let you know the dates because many of you want to go ahead and mark your calendar and ask off if you have work or make family plans. And don't forget, bring the young kids with you. Beautiful indoor water park, horseback riding, bowling alley, and so much more. Many, many young families this last year. Many young families with young children. And I guess they brought family members or babysitters, and they were enjoying the amenities of the resort while the parents and the grandparents took in the conference. So do that again because it's a family vacation with a purpose. May 3, 4, and 5, 2019. Full details at wvwtv.com/Ozarks. Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. And don't forget about our 16th annual Ozarks Worldview Weekend coming up the first weekend of May, Holocaust Horizon. And all the details can be found at wvwtv.com/Ozarks. wvwtv.com/Ozarks. All right? Come as a family. Bring the young kids. Those that are too young to sit in the conference, there's plenty of activities for them if you bring a babysitter or family member, and it'll be a great weekend for the whole family. All the details there at wvwtv.com/Ozarks. And all of our speakers there live in person. And you can be part of the live studio audience as well as we film our docu-movie, Holocaust Horizon. And the subtitle of that one is the coming global persecution of Christians and conservatives and Jews by a red-green axis and false church. Isn't it interesting? We're talking about the coming persecution of Christians and conservatives and Jews by a false church. And what do we see? James Comey, former FBI director, quoting and praising and living out the worldview of a, quote, Christian Marxist. Folks, this is your false church we're talking about. And it's reached to the highest levels of government. That's very appropriate for Holocaust Horizon. Now, my friends, I want to make sure that you are with us tomorrow. I hope you're with us every day. But I want you to make a special note to be with us tomorrow. Alert all your family and friends, particularly those of you living in the Midwest, because tomorrow we're going to have a very special broadcast. We are going to alert you to the infiltration of a Christian institution in the Midwest that has stopped a young student from inviting in a Christian pro-life speaker. And the Christian pro-life speaker, and many of you will know the name of this person, this Christian pro-life speaker, it is reported by the student, and she will tell the story tomorrow, that the president of this, quote, Christian university said that this Christian pro-life leader had been radicalized. And this Christian student was not allowed to bring in a Christian pro-life speaker who's also known to oppose social justice and socialism. and the welfare state. What's very interesting is this young student, I've known her parents since before she was born, and she, as an infant, was dedicated on the same church platform the same night with two of my children. So I have known her since she was an infant, and now I'm feeling really old. And this 19-year-old sophomore in this Christian university will be my guest tomorrow to tell you who the speaker was she wanted to invite in to speak for her conservative club, the university, and the president of this so-called Christian university, that she says shut her down. You do not want to miss this breaking story. They came to us to break the story because she said, I don't have the voice the college has, the university has. We need to get our side of the story out. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we'll break that story, 1 p.m. Central Time. Joining me now is Diana West. She is the author of a new book called The Red Thread. The Red Thread. You can find it at securefreedom.org, or at Amazon. All right, Diana, before the break, we were talking about Strobe Talbott calling for world government in 1993 in Time Magazine, and then he gets the award, the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award from the World Federalist Association. And tell me the significance of that.
Well, the reverberations just don't stop, really. Strobe Talbott, as you mentioned earlier, was chosen by Bill Clinton to be the lead administration figure in his policy toward what was becoming Russia. This was the time of transition between the Soviet Union to the supposedly new Russia. And Strobe Talbott was the head of what they called a troika of he at the State Department. He was very senior at the State Department with special powers, and Vice President Al Gore, who has his own red thread, which we could get into, as well as Larry Summers. This was the troika that was designing our policy. And years later, we have to wait till 2009 to find this out from a former Washington Post reporter by the name of Pete Early, who wrote a book called Comrade J, which was about a very important Russian spy master named Sergei Trechikov, who directed, this is post-Cold War, at what we call post-Cold War espionage in the United States. So in other words, Soviet Union was supposed to go away, but somehow the KGB did not get the message. And even though they changed their initials to SVR, they were doing the exact same thing they'd always been doing, and Sergei Trechikov was their number one man in this period when Strobe was running Russia policy, and Sergei Trechikov was operating here. At a certain point late in the 1990s, Sergei Trechikov began working as a double agent and informing to the United States authorities what the Russians were doing in the United States. And one of the things he told us, which, again, only came out in 2009, so we had to wait a long time for this, was that Strobe Talbott was considered by Russian intelligence to be what they called a special unofficial contact. And this is very significant because somebody like that is a very highly placed personage, very senior political figure who has great power, who is regarded as somebody that can be used to further the Kremlin's ends. It's essentially a witting or unwitting agent of influence. Trechikov emphasized he was not calling Strobe Talbott a spy in that, I think in the sense of, stealing secrets and passing them, but someone who was so close to Russian figures that he could be used to further Russian ends. And as a example of what kind of figure becomes a special unofficial contact or is regarded as one, he offered the example of Raul Castro, as Fidel Castro's brother, who was also regarded by the Kremlin as a special unofficial contact. So this shows the kind of figure that Strobe Talbott was, and there's a point at which the FBI is conducting some kind of a security investigation at the State Department, and they literally go to Madeleine Albright, who was at that time Secretary of State, and they tell her, don't mention that we're doing this security investigation here to Strobe Talbott, who was her senior deputy. So this is the extent to which he was recognized inside our own security services as well as the Kremlin security services as a threat, as somebody who could not be trusted.
Wow. Wow. All right, so eventually, so what you're saying again is the Cold War, well, it's over. The Cold War's over. But once again, we've been trying to tell people through guys like Peter Pry, Trevor Loudon, Jeffrey Nyquist.
Yes.
We've been trying to tell people the collapse of the Soviet Union was all a ruse. And in fact, in one of our docu-movies, Siege, that we're working on now, there was a guy who wrote a book, a former KGB agent, where he predicted the collapse of the Soviet Union before it happened. That's how you predict it's going to happen. And he made over 70 predictions at one time. I think the number's higher. That came to pass all before they happened. And this is a former KGB agent, and I can't remember the name of the book that he wrote in his name.
New Lies for Old by Golitsyn.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have it downstairs. And he made multiple predictions that the Soviet Union would collapse, quote, collapse. It'd be a ruse, how they would do it, why they would do it. And someone did a study to find out what percentage of these predictions had come true. And it was over 70, and the study needs now to be updated because I think Jeffrey Nyquist says it's far more than that now. So again, all those people run around and say, well, you guys push conspiracy, you guys are conspiracy theorists, and you get that, Diana, I get that. We even get it from inside evangelicalism and the, quote, conservative camp. This is all documented.
Right. Well, it's basically Americans have a hard time understanding the extent to which the Soviets, the Russians, have a tremendous talent for long-range planning. I mean, it's not so much a conspiracy theory, except in the sense that you have to understand how far-sighted they are, how much time they will give to projects, generations. We are very much oriented in a different way for instant results, for a very short-sighted kind of focus. Perhaps it has something to do also with our democratic politics, that things go back and forth, and there is no sense of permanence in this kind of statecraft. There are other factors as well, but it really is remarkable. And I think one thing in the red thread that I tried to restore to our understanding of current events is how they are long in the making. And look at how many American actors can be seen in this same kind of Soviet-style continuity over the decades. People reaching back to mentors from the 30s and 40s, such as a Reinhold Niebuhr, or even going back further to the foundation of the Communist Party of the United States, which goes back to around 1919. So, there is continuity in the Marxist mind. Maybe that is a commonality that we can now see thriving, unfortunately, in our own country. So, long-range planning, secrecy, lawlessness, I mean, these are the hallmarks of the sort of communist conquest that we've seen in other countries. And something frightening also to note is that one of the hallmarks of revolution or of a takeover very often is the seizure of your internal security services, of your justice-type departments. And we can look in Eastern Europe and see that, for example, in Czechoslovakia, a place like that, where once the infiltration goes into these kinds of civil services, you're done. And when we look at what's happened to our own Justice Department and FBI in terms of penetration, it's very frightening. Once upon a time, say 50, 60 years ago, we were concerned about penetration of our State Department, which had to do with our foreign policy. Now we're looking at penetration inside our very domestic-focused departments, such as Justice and the FBI, and it's very frightening for what it portends.
And do you realize what that means for people like you and I and other
not
loud?
Good.
No, it's not good. I mean, when you have James Comey talking about and quoting guys that are talking about fake Christians, okay? And this is what Reinhold Niebuhr talked about, was fake Christians, the fake Christianity, because we were opposing communism. So you got the former head of the FBI, and at the time FBI director, following a guy that called fake Christians those who oppose communism. James Comey, who followed a guy and praised a guy who believed that there was no such thing as right or wrong, there was only power, same thing Nietzsche taught. And so what does that mean for people like you and I that are opposing communism? And you're doing it in the culture, I'm doing it in the evangelical world, and they're all following people calling themselves Christians, following Christian Marxists, Christian communists like Reinhold Niebuhr, and they think we're the enemy. Now, do you
Right.
think it's going to end well for us when the highest people in the intelligence and law enforcement community on the national side, like the FBI, think that we're the enemy and don't believe in right and wrong and only power? Do you think that's going to end well for you and me?
No, it won't end well for any of us. No, that's very true. And I think that on the Reinhold Niebuhr story, besides his involvement in the church and his influences in religion, it's also important to remember that in his, say, in the 1930s and 40s and beyond, the 50s and 60s, he was notorious for his involvement in communist front groups, in political groups. These were not church-related organizations. These were communist front groups as identified by the Attorney General at the time of the country. So it's important to see he's working in both spheres. One of the front groups he was very involved in was a group called the American League for Peace and Democracy. It was really a communist superfront group. It had 7.5 million members at its peak in probably the 1940s. And I would just like to note that the Attorney General, Francis Biddle, talked about this group in a memo as having been established in our country, quote, in an effort to create public sentiment on behalf of a foreign policy adapted to the interests of the Soviet Union.
Wow, hold right there. My guest, Diana West, will be back with more, including was Strobe Talbot being used by the KGB, according to Senator Jesse Helms. Are you sick and tired of the fake news? Are you even sick and tired of Fox News? I know I am. A lot of the liberals on there, their political correctness, their tabloid journalism, their constant repeating of the same news stories over and over, and they never really get to the real issues, and they certainly don't cover them from a biblical worldview perspective, and they seem to sometimes just flat out cater to Islam. They will only go so far when it comes to talking about Islam, right? Well, maybe it's time to cancel cable and come over to SituationRoom.net. SituationRoom.net is your conservative worldview TV channel. Let me say that again. SituationRoom.net is your conservative worldview channel. We have numerous original TV shows we produce right from our television studios in Memphis, Tennessee. Check it out right now, SituationRoom.net, SituationRoom.net. In fact, we have nearly 20,000 radio shows, TV shows, and specials, conference DVDs at SituationRoom.net. Check out all the many TV shows, radio shows, ebooks, audiobooks, transcripts, and more when you join SituationRoom.net. You can join for as little as $9.99 a month, $99 a year, $149 for 2 years, or save $100 and join at the 3-year rate of $199. My friends, SituationRoom.net. It is your conservative worldview TV channel. Now, you can watch a lot of our TV shows for free at WVWTV.com. We put a lot of our TV shows right there for free at WVWTV.com. But we don't put all our TV shows there. We don't put all of our specials or conference DVDs there. No, there are some shows and some things are only for Situation Room members. We archive all of our Sunday night programs there in the Situation Room. A lot of the guests we bring in and we fly in and the different special events we sponsor, they're never made available to the general public. They're only for Situation Room members. So you can have exclusive access right now. All of this material, nearly 20,000 radio shows, TV shows, conference DVDs, and specials and ebooks and audiobooks at SituationRoom.net. SituationRoom.net is your conservative worldview TV channel. Cancel your cable and join SituationRoom.net. My guest, Diana West, author of The Red Thread, available on Amazon. And during the break, Diana was telling me that this is doing very well. It's 114, 115 pages. It's not long. It's looks longer when I print it out 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, but it's not that long. It's a quick read and one you should read. Again, I would recommend if you got my book Marxianity at Marxianity.com, got The Red Thread. You read them both, and folks, you're going to see what it is we've been trying to tell you for a long time, that this is a movement. The cultural Marxists have penetrated education, religion, media, and our government, the power centers. Education, religion, media, and government. Very, very important material in this book, The Red Thread, that I'm so thankful for because it helps me to see what Comey was up to as FBI director, following a Christian Marxist, if you will, the same guy being promoted by Tim Keller, president of the Gospel Coalition, that includes leaders like Al Mohler, Mark Dever, Lyndon Duncan, Russell Moore, David Platt, and many others I talk about in my book, Marxianity. So Marxianity and the Red Thread really go well together. Now, during the break, Diana, you told me how well the book's doing on Amazon. It's up there in one of the major categories. What is that?
Yes, well, it's a hot new category just because of our current politics. It's been doing very well, often hitting number 1 and number 2, both the book and the Kindle, in Amazon's hot new releases in the category of communism and socialism. Now, I'm hoping that they'll revise the category to be anti-communism, communism, and socialism, but we'll have to wait and see.
Let's talk about, so again, it's available at Amazon. It's called The Red Thread. Diana, let's talk about Jesse Helms.
Yes.
Did Jesse Helms, the late Senator Jesse Helms now, but then U.S. Senator Jesse Helms, staunch anti-communist, did he believe that Strobe Talbott, this high-ranking man at the State Department who was calling for world government and getting awards from global governance organizations and roomed with Bill Clinton in 1969 at Oxford as they were Rhodes Scholars, did Jesse Helms believe that Strobe Talbott might be being used by the KGB as a top-ranking State Department official?
Yes, he did. He opposed his nomination to this very senior State Department position that Bill Clinton put him in at the beginning of his first administration. And he was very, as typical for Senator Helms, always very strong-willed and minded, and he was very vocal about his opposition. And he brought some very frightening facts to the public about Talbott, namely that his rise as a journalist. Now, Talbott did not come out of the diplomatic corps to become a senior State Department official. He was actually a Time magazine correspondent and editor for all of his career, really, that I know of, before he went into the State Department. And while he was there, he was very often in Moscow, and he had become very close to a man named Victor Louis, who was known to the Western intelligence services and known publicly, and certainly after Senator Helms discussed it on the Senate floor, as a known KGB agent of influence. He was someone whose job it was to befriend and become indispensable to Western journalists and feed them disinformation. And Strobe Talbott was one who had a very close relationship with this man, Victor Louis, and indeed one of Talbott's early coups as a journalist that really made his name was that he was the translator of Khrushchev's memoirs, and it came out later on that Victor Louis had actually leaked them to Talbott, and indeed this was confirmed by the bureau chief at the time, a man named Schechter, who later wrote about, but again, very late. We find all these things out very late, that yes, this had been leaked to Strobe Talbott. And Ken Timmerman wrote a very fascinating piece about this some years ago, where he was explaining how even in that memoir that Talbott translated was Soviet disinformation that actually aided in the rise of Andropov to become the leader of the Soviet Union. So these things had tremendous consequences, and Senator Helms was very disturbed that someone who had been gulled and manipulated to this extent, regardless of his own knowingness or intentions, he wasn't accusing him necessarily of being a traitor, but someone who at the very least had this terrible, terrible judgment, should certainly not be in this position of control and creation of our policy toward this new entity known as Russia after the fall, or rather dissolution of the Soviet Union. So Helms spoke out about this on the Senate floor, but it was to no avail, and the U.S. Senate confirmed Talbott by a vote of 66-31.
So after Strobe leaves the State Department, serves all the way to the end of the Clinton administration.
Yes.
And when he leaves, he takes up and becomes the president. Pay attention, folks. He becomes president of the Brookings Institution. Now, this is a group, if you go to their website, they will boast about how they helped to found the United Nations. And if you go to our website and watch some of our TV shows, you will see that 2 years ago, and in my book, Marxianity, I write in detail, I write in detail about the Brookings Institute, not only helping and bragging about helping to found the United Nations, so it would make sense that Strobe Talbott would go there since the UN is about world government, and he's already on the record with Time magazine calling for world government. But you will find that there is an organization I deal with in my book, Marxianity, called the Kern Family Foundation. You guys remember me talking about the Kern Family Foundation? Well, the Kern Family Foundation, they've changed their website some since I've did my broadcast, but we have all the screenshots and embedded it into TV shows for you to see over a year ago, about a year and a half ago now. The Kern Family Foundation openly bragged on their website that they work with the Brookings Institute, the Brookings Institution. This is a group, again, that is all about pushing world government and radical liberalism. We won't go into all the people they've worked with or have had on their board or had on their board, including people from the Federal Reserve, Yellen. But the fact that Strobe Talbott was the president for 15 years of Brookings Institution pretty much tells you what you need to know, right? But here's the Kern Family Foundation working with, according to their website, the Kern Family Foundation website, say our partners include the Brookings Institution. But they also went on to state on their website that one of the groups they work with is the Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture. Now, that's at the University of Virginia. And as we document in our TV show, and I document in my book, Marxianity, what was on the website of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture? Quote, our institutional inspiration comes from the close-knit intellectual fellowships of the past, such as the Frankfurt School, end quote. Now, when we brought that out, all of a sudden their website changed. But again, we have the screenshot, and we embedded it into a TV show, so it's archived. But who else is the Kern Family Foundation working with? They boast on their website they're working with a group, the Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture, that's inspired by the Frankfurt School, cultural Marxist. We read that they're working with the Brookings Institution, Strobe Talbott's group, that has helped create the United Nations, calling for world government. And they also work with, wait for it, the Kern Family Foundation also works with Al Mohler. Oh, good old Al Mohler, that great Reformed theologian, Al Mohler, from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, the Southern Baptist being the largest Protestant denomination in America. And what do they fund, according to Al? And it's embedded in our TV show. Al standing at a podium thanking the Kern Family Foundation for funding what is called Common Weal. But my friends, Weal is spelled W-E-A-L. What is missing? I think the TH. What they're really calling for is Commonwealth. And what does the Commonweal Project under the leadership of Al Mohler do? Al Mohler being part of the Cultural Marxist Gospel Coalition. Well, they're part of training young people to go into ministry for the common good, human flourishing, social justice. And they're part of the Oikonomia Network out of the Trinity Divinity in Deerfield, Illinois. And what is the Oikonomia Network doing? Working with thought leaders like Tim Keller's gal to create transformational churches. What do they mean by that? Social justice churches. And what has Tim Keller said on audio and video? We need churches for the poor and churches for the unbeliever. You don't have churches for unbelievers, folks. Church means ecclesia, called out ones, Christians. Now, they can show up, but churches are not for unbelievers. Churches are for Christians. That's what they're for. And then Christians go out into the world and preach. But here they are building churches for the unbeliever, for the poor, using as a thought leader Tim Keller's one of his main people. And yet there's Al Mohler working with that through the Oikonomia Network, through Common Weal that he runs, which is funded by the Kern Family Foundation, who's in partnership with the Brookings Institution and a group, the Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture, who says our inspiration comes from the cultural Marxist Frankfurt School. Nothing to see here, people. Move along. We're not going to oppose them. They're our friends. No, we have opposed them because they are a threat to the church. That's why I wrote Marxianity. Now, I'm sure all that is new to you, just as I've learned stuff from you, Diana.
Yes.
We're hopefully bringing you new material that shows you, again, these cultural Marxists have penetrated media, education, religion, and government, and many of them are following the same thought leaders.
Yes, it's really astonishing, and I would just throw in on the Brookings side that the largest foreign donor to the Brookings Institution has been the Islamic country of Qatar. So you've got just millions and millions of dollars sloshing in from the Islamic world as well. So
if you're getting funding from Qatar, are we not talking Islam now?
Yes, of course.
So now we're talking about the red-green axis.
Yes.
1-800-347-9829, 1-800-347-9829. Again, 1-800-347-9829. What do you think about what you've been hearing the last couple of days, my friends? Now's the chance for you. Maybe get some feedback to Diana. Thank her for her work. I mean, I think she's done a great job here and certainly helped me to understand the worldview of James Comey. 1-800-347-9829, 1-800-347-9829. So basically, before we go to the phone lines here, Diana, what you're saying is there's a red thread behind this anti-Trump conspiracy, and it certainly looks like it was a conspiracy. They were conspiring to take down a candidate, then take down a sitting president. And it seems as though the people behind this are people who have a sympathy, if not an outright Marxist worldview. And we know Marxism is not for national sovereignty. Marxism is not for borders. Marxism is not for patriotism of our constitutional republic. Marxism is for destruction of private property, redistribution of wealth, and world domination. So apparently the red thread here were conspiring to make sure that Donald Trump did not disrupt their global plans for the New World Order. True or false?
That's exactly it. And I think that Donald Trump was the catalyst for all of this activity, all of this conspiracy, all of this frenetic, desperate, outrageous, and often quite sloppy planning that they've done. I mean, a lot of these things seem very ill-conceived that we're now trying to understand, but the common thread, which it does seem to be red, the common thread is this bias toward our constitutional form of government, toward the republic itself, which means that every single one of these public servants who've sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, has been telling a lie. And I think that that is what comes clear when you actually try and find their true beliefs in the kinds of leaders, thought leaders, spiritual people, educators, politicians, and so on, who have dedicated their lives to tearing down everything we have in this country flowing from our Constitution. So they are the very kinds of un-American type of activities that once upon a time we were sensitive to and tried to protect ourselves against. At this point, we're essentially blind to it, which is, again, why I engaged in this exercise to try to reintroduce people to notions that are detrimental to our continued existence.
Absolutely. And we come back, we'll go to the phone lines, which are lighting up. We'll get to Mark, Jose, Jacob. They're calling in from Wisconsin all the way down to Texas. 1-800-347-9829. We'll be right back. Thank you to all of you that support our broadcast ministry of putting out free radio and television programs, whether it's through our free YouTube channel, our free Roku channel, our free website, or our free app. We are distributing Biblical Worldview radio and television. Now, how do we pay for all the expensive programming and bandwidth and other expenses? Because you partner with us with a tax-deductible contribution through the Worldview Weekend Foundation. To make a tax-deductible contribution right now, please go to wvwfoundation.com. That's wvwfoundation.com. You can also send a check to Worldview Weekend Foundation, P.O. Box 1690, Collierville, Tennessee, 38027. That's P.O. Box 1690, Collierville, Tennessee, 38027. You can also give by phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, 901-825-0652. However you give, whether by mail, online, or by phone. Thank you for your tax-deductible support that keeps us broadcasting free of charge Biblical Worldview radio and television. Welcome back. Let's go right away to the phone lines. Mark, thank you for calling in. Mark, go right ahead, Mark.
When Comey got away with without indicting Hillary Clinton for her email scandal, I thought Loretta Lynch all but accused herself as Attorney General in that whole scenario. She said that it would be James Comey's call, and that wasn't that long after she had that matter of Chance bumping into Bill Clinton in the parking lot. Wasn't that...
the tarmac, on the tarmac.
Yeah. So you talk about, like collusion, and I think she accused herself from responsibility on that. And Comey, he got away without indicting her.
Yes, he did.
Right. Well, and that's a perfect example of Comey using the philosophy of the ends justify the means. He had absolutely no legal place, no professional place to make that judgment call that there would be no indictment. That was,
right.
As FBI director, that was not his call.
Right.
But he took it. He seized the power, and he was able to make the call. And as you say, nothing happened.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Jose. Jose, thank you for calling in, sir. Go right ahead.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Oh, hi. Thanks for everything you guys are doing. Just had a question. I heard a report in the past that James Comey would attend the same Bible study as Robert Mueller, and I just wanted to ask what the link, there would be.
Yeah, I think it was their wives, wasn't it, Diana?
I'm not sure. I think that might have been
Mueller.
William Barr and Robert Mueller's
Yes,
wives
thank
attending
you.
the
That's
new
right.
Attorney General.
Yes.
There are
Yes.
links, however, between Mueller and Comey. I believe that it's Comey who looks on Mueller really as his mentor.
Mm-hmm.
They have served together in different capacities, and the idea that Mueller could be investigating anything that has to do with James Comey is absolutely a conflict of interest, and there's a great amount of history between them that makes that completely inappropriate.
Isn't there also a connection between Comey's brother and the Clintons?
Yes, but I couldn't go into it. I don't have the facts at my fingertips.
I think.
Yeah.
I think. I can't remember, but there is definitely a connection between the Comey's brother and the Clintons. If you guys go look it up. All right, let's go to Jacob from Victoria, Texas. Jacob, thank you for calling in, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I want to thank you both also, as Jose said, for what y'all do, both of you. I seen you, Diana, on C-SPAN a few years back. You were doing a book, C-SPAN book report on that book you wrote, American Betrayal.
Yes, yes, great.
I kind of want to ask you a really tall one right now, but you think, I think you'll understand, it's not about the immediate subject at hand, but can you explain how Roosevelt and Harry Hopkins during World War II supplied the Russians with all the nuclear plans for the bomb and the materials, and how we shored them up and all that?
Yeah.
All that. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing thing, but there are contemporary parallels. The quick story is that Harry Hopkins was the number one aide to Franklin Roosevelt, and indeed lived in the White House during World War II, much of World War II, and was really the most powerful man in Washington, except for President Roosevelt. And there's a lot of evidence that he was himself operating, much like Strobe Talbot, as an agent of influence. Conscious or not, we can argue about it. It's a slightly different designation than the special unofficial contact that Strobe was considered by the modern-day KGB or SVR. But when you see the movement of atomic ingredients, the kinds of piping, uranium itself, which had been embargoed by the Manhattan Project, you see it being moved under Harry Hopkins' aegis at the Lend-Lease Project. You have to ask yourself these questions as to how the Soviets were able to get the bomb. It wasn't just the theft of small thieves like the Rosenberg ring. There were a lot of other players involved, and there's an argument to make that it came out of the White House as well as a number of other scientists who were also giving information and help to the Soviet bomb project. But think about Uranium One. Think about the sale of 20% of American uranium stocks during the Obama administration that was okayed by President Obama and all the heads of his various departments, including Secretary of State Clinton, during that whole Russian reset period. We can see these games played over and over again, where the interests of a foreign entity, a foreign state, a hostile state actor like the Kremlin, Russia, Soviet Union, are advanced by the very people who are at the highest levels of our government.
And then, of course, we have the Club K cars and the Gulf Tanner Company deal that went through at the same time that we deal with in the movie Sabotage at sabotagethemovie.com. Let's go to Steve in Kansas. Steve, thank you for calling in. Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hello. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
You guys were talking about the conspiracy against Trump with Comey and including crime family. But let's not forget John McCain, who was originally on the dossier that he pushed against Trump with the prostitutes over in Russia.
Well, John McCain is in the red thread as well, particularly because one of his top aides, David Kramer, is a very important player in the whole conspiracy. And I actually have a red thread on the Kramer family because they're very involved in our stance toward Russia for many years. So that does get into the book, and I agree with you. McCain was very important in the entire effort against President Trump.
Let's go to Randy, line 1. Randy, thank you for calling in, Randy.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Randy.
Hi, Brannon. Well, I want to just say that yesterday I was at my church that I've been attending, and the pastor mentioned he doesn't like it when people talk about, I think, Democrats as being evil, and then he said Republicans and Democrats, we need to be together. And then in there he has together is in the sermon notes, and I just it just flabbergasted me.
Well, let me just say from this standpoint, there are a lot of crooked Republicans. I think we just talked about one, John McCain. So I don't know what the pastor's trying to say, but I would agree with him if he's trying to say there are a lot of crooked Republicans and a lot of crooked Democrats. They've infiltrated both parties, which is what Carol Quigley wrote in his book Tragedy and Hope, that they were going to infiltrate both parties, so if the public decides to throw the bombs out, their globalist agenda won't be disrupted. So I don't know if that's what he's trying to say or not, Randy, but there are some crooked Republicans. I think we just talked about one of them. Diana, we got like 15 seconds left. You want to comment?
Yes, I would say that very often there's a dime's bit of difference between the two parties, which again is why Donald Trump was the catalyst for this conspiracy that really has supporters in both parties.
Yeah, so isn't it interesting they weren't worried about some of the rhino Republicans, they were worried about Donald Trump. It's called The Red Thread. It's available at Amazon as well as securefreedom.org. Diana, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Brannon. I've enjoyed it.
And we're going to have her on television as well, folks. We'll record some TV shows with her. All right? Stay tuned for Crosstalk. Thanks for listening. Take care.
This has been Worldview Weekend Radio with Brannon Howse. CDs are available by calling 1-800-729-9829. Or to hear an MP3 file of this or earlier programs, go to worldviewweekend.com. Views expressed may or may not be those of Worldview Weekend, BCY America, or this station. This program is a public affairs presentation of worldviewweekend.com and is heard weekdays on BCY America.
Sabotage the Movie and Marxianity the book have been a huge success, thanks in part to people like you that have spread the word. And to thank you for your support, we are putting together a special package price where you can get Sabotage the Movie and Marxianity the book at a great savings for just $39.99 for both. That's the 6-hour docu-movie Sabotage and the 336-page book Marxianity packaged together at a savings price of just $39.99. You can order now at sabotagethemovie.com. Order this special package price right now at sabotagethemovie.com. Now, you, of course, can buy Sabotage by itself. You can buy Marxianity by itself. But these two resources complement each other, so why not get both? Sabotage the Movie and Marxianity the book. Now a special package price, passing on savings to you, thanking you for all your support and getting out the word about Sabotage the Movie and Marxianity the book. Go right now, if you would, and purchase this special package price as a gift or for yourself at sabotagethemovie.com. That's sabotagethemovie.com.